As more hotels emerged, the new connection to California through Interstate 15 and the construction of a new airport for commercial jets allowed more tourists than ever to have fast and easy access to Las Vegas. This, mixed with the excitement of the casinos and the allure of top-notch entertainment, made the town a prime spot for the growing business convention market.
When President Eisenhower and the Republicans took over the White House and Congress in the 1950s, they passed a whole series of reforms of the income tax code, creating what we could call the deduction for the 3-martini lunch. They made it possible to be able to deduct your travel if you created an association and went and listened to speeches, exhibited goods, and basically went to a convention, learned more about your trade every year.
This led to the creation of the Las Vegas Convention Center in 1959. It hosted 8 conventions in its first year, attended by more than 22,000 delegates. But the entertainment, the gaming, the glitz, and the glamour weren't the only attractions Las Vegas had to offer. Starting in January of 1951, Las Vegas began hosting the greatest fireworks show the world had ever seen, taking place just 65 miles northwest and courtesy of the United States government. America had recently entered the atomic age, and with it would come hundreds of nuclear tests, both above and below ground. The majority of these blasts took place in southern Nevada, on the recently named Nevada Test Site. Curious Las Vegans would venture out to watch the explosions, unknowingly exposing themselves to untold amounts of radiation.
I remember when I was in high school, going out and watching atmospheric tests and seeing this psychedelic color of this mushroom coming over the horizon.
You believed what government told you, and you know, government had this whole big PR campaign under Louis Strauss, the head of AEC, saying, you'll be safe, just duck and cover, just don't stand next to a plate glass window, just don't look at the blast without sunglasses, you'll be safe.
Sundays, holidays, vacation time, we must be ready every day, all the time, to do the right thing if the atomic bomb explodes. Duck and cover. This family knows what to do, just as your own family should. They know that even a thin cloth helps protect them. Even a newspaper can save you from a bad burn.
He did what we all must learn to do. You and you and you and you. Duck and cover.
Because little was publicly known about the dangers of radiation, Las Vegas publicists used the spectacle to their advantage.
Las Vegas, I think historically, has always made the best with what it had to work with, and in those days it had an atomic bomb to work with.
This would translate to publicity stunts like the Miss Atomic Bomb pageant and drink specials promoting atomic cocktails.
And it did create a lot of vitality in the community, a tremendous amount of people coming and going, whether they were Washington or whether they were workers.
Ultimately, the greatest effect the test site would have on Las Vegas was the nearly 100,000 people who worked there over the years, many of whom have stayed in the area. This helped add to an even greater expansion of Las Vegas in the 1960s. Between 1960 and 1970, 10 more major hotels would open on both the Strip and Fremont Street. At the same time, established hotels like the Dunes and the Sands were expanding, with high-rise towers to accommodate the ever-growing number of guests coming to be entertained. The Sands was home to the most popular act of the time, a musical and comedy show starring Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop. Fans lovingly referred to the group as the Rat Pack.
You can get high watching this show. You set me on a flame, and it's so pleasing. Be a goddamn shame if you were only teasing.
When Sinatra was here, every night was New Year's Eve. I mean, it was really exciting. But he made guys like Trini Lopez. I mean, by merely showing up where Trini was working down on Crescent Heights Boulevard in L.A., Frank took the guys in there 2 or 3 or 4 nights. The word got out, and the joint was a tremendous success, and that was the beginning of Trini's career.
In the winter of 1960, the Rat Pack stars performed evening shows at the Sands while filming the Las Vegas-based motion picture Ocean's 11.
How'd it come off? Like a charm. Same here, fantastic.
Along with the 1964 Elvis Presley musical, Viva Las Vegas, Ocean's 11 helped play up the excitement and entertainment the town had to offer. The films defined Las Vegas in American pop culture for years to come.
Truthfully, if my heart's in the right place, the entertainment capital was here in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then when Howard Hughes got here, everything shifted, and the winds changed, and a lot of the ships just sailed away and never came back.
On Thanksgiving weekend in 1966, reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes arrived in Las Vegas in a 2-car private train and took up residence on the top floor of the Desert Inn.
And you have to imagine that here we were occupying the best accommodations in the hotel. All of the Hughes entourage never gambled. We were not good tenants for a hotel. I mean, we didn't gamble, we didn't have big parties, we didn't have big dinners, and they were getting sick and tired of us, and I mean for real.
Finally, when faced with the possibility of being kicked out, Hughes bought the Desert Inn from Cleveland mobster Mo Dalitz for nearly $13 million. Soon afterwards, Hughes realized that his recent sale of Trans World Airlines had left him in an unfavorable tax position that could be best remedied by investing in new businesses.
He said, "Bob, how many more of these toys are available?" I said, "What do you mean toys?" He said, "I mean, how many more of these casinos are available?"
Increased government investigations influenced many of the mob-based casino owners to sell their hotels.
At that particular time, Las Vegas was in dire straits. And came along a man who could, for all practical purposes, clean up the image of Las Vegas.
And so, during his 4 years living on the top floor of the Desert Inn, Hughes would buy the Sands, the Frontier, the Castaways, the Silver Slipper, and the Landmark hotels. He left Las Vegas just as quietly as he came, moving again on Thanksgiving in 1970. But as Howard Hughes was paving the way to a new corporate-controlled Las Vegas, city leaders realized that the growing demand for water meant a need for serious change in distribution. Officials turned to President Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was then enacting a large number of domestic programs.
Senator Howard Cannon and Alan Bible convinced Johnson to build the Southern Nevada Water Project, a major pipeline from Lake Mead directly into Las Vegas. You've got to have water if you're going to have a large population in a big city.
By 1969, like many other parts of the country, Las Vegas was divided on the issue of racial integration. Though Vegas casinos had integrated in 1960, school and housing segregation still existed. And in October of 1969, a full-scale riot erupted for 2 days, causing Governor Paul Laxalt to mobilize the National Guard. Various protests continued for the next few years, giving the tourism-driven town much unwanted publicity. More negative press would follow in the 1970s when an underground novel showed America the dark side of Vegas. In 1971, Hunter S. Thompson took an assignment to write captions for Sports Illustrated's coverage of the Mint 400, a desert off-road race held in Las Vegas. Though Thompson's original 2,500-word manuscript was rejected, he began turning his experience into a novel, documenting the contrast between the American dream image promoted by the Vegas tourism industry and his own darkly comic, drug-induced observations of the town. Fear and loathing in Las Vegas became a pop culture phenomenon and gave a new generation of Americans a darker, more nonsensical conception of what it was like to visit Las Vegas.
The Circus is what the whole half world would be doing on Saturday night if the Nazis had won the war. So you're down on the main floor playing blackjack, and the stakes are getting high, when suddenly you chance to look up, and there, right smack above your head, is a half-naked 14-year-old girl being chased through the air by a snarling wolverine.
But as the outside perceptions of Las Vegas were changing, so too were the city's internal politics and business methods. After realizing the effect that a respected businessman like Howard Hughes had on buying out many of the mafia elements within the town, government officials decided a change needed to happen.
The state legislature, at the urging of Governor Laxalt, passed the corporate gaming law in 1969. And that made it possible for corporations like Hyatt, Hilton, Kokorian's Tracinda Corporation, and others to come into Las Vegas.
Headlining the corporate casino's entertainment bills were many well-established acts, most notably the king himself, Elvis Presley. From 1969 to 1977, Presley performed 837 sold-out shows in Las Vegas, making him the symbol of the town, almost iconic today as he was then. Another staple of Vegas entertainment was the town's most extravagant piano player, Liberace, who in 1975 became Vegas's top-drawing performer, earning $125,000 a week. Liberace's offstage demeanor was often just as gracious and enthusiastic as his onstage persona, making him a favorite of many other Vegas entertainers.
He was good for the industry. He brought something to the table. He didn't just take, and he used beautiful girls and great sets and costumes and cars, and he was just fun.
But as audiences flocked to see performers at the new corporate-owned hotels, the last few mob-owned casinos were feeling the heat from the local, state, and federal government.
Prosecutors from the organized crime strike force start lopping off the heads, if you will, of Chicago, Kansas City, and Milwaukee organized crime interests.
They had set up an extreme bugging system where telephone conversations in a lot of the major hotels and their executive offices were bugged by the FBI.
These investigations led to information about Chicago Mafia associates Frank Lefty Rosenthal and Anthony the Ant Spilatro.
In 1973 and 74, a young real estate developer out of Southern California named Alan Glick got more than $60 million in Teamsters pension loans to buy the Stardust, Fremont, and Hacienda.
Unknown to the public at the time was the fact that Glick was only a frontman for the casinos, which were funneling money into the Chicago mob and were run on a daily basis by Rosenthal.
Now, he is from Chicago, and since they were kids, he had known Anthony Spilatro. And in the early 70s, Spilatro was sent out to Las Vegas by Chicago essentially to move into an area that organized crime hadn't been that interested in before, which was street rackets, burglaries, and that sort of thing.
In 1974, the Los Angeles Times reported that in the 3 years Spilatro had been in Las Vegas, more gangland-style murders had been committed there than in the past 25 years combined. This amount of attention was uncommon for most Vegas mobsters, but as Rosenthal secretly ran the casinos and worked the skim for Chicago, he rarely shied away from publicity.
Rosenthal did columns for local papers. He had a TV show. This is the kind of thing that guys like Mo Dalitz with the Desert Inn in the old days must have thought utterly ridiculous.
Like Bugsy Siegel in the 1940s, Spilatro and Rosenthal's unwillingness to be discreet would lead to their downfall. In 1978, Rosenthal was denied a gaming license and narrowly escaped a 1982 attempt on his life when a car bomb destroyed his vehicle. Spilatro was not so lucky. His name was entered into the Black Book, forbidding him entrance to Vegas casinos. He was also brought up on murder charges, and though he was never convicted, it was clear he had gone too far when his battered body was found beside his brother's, buried in an Indiana cornfield.